хозяин.
Три праздничка в гости, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился.
А как первый праздник,
Святое Рождество, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился.
а другой-то праздник,
Василий Великий, радуйся, ой, радуйся, земля, Сын Божий народился.
а что третий праздник,
Святое крещение, радуйся.
Good evening and welcome to the Black Ibis Social Club. I'm your host, Alexandra Constantine. We got Fisto in the corner, and tonight we are getting invaded. I mean, come on, this place is full. We have like 5 guests. This is a record for us, I think. I think this is the most guests we've ever had. What do you think, Fisto?
I believe that the open border policy for Black Ibis Social Club is probably the most dramatic development in the history of the series.
I don't know what's happened.
So I have ice on speed dial ready to go if these guys get a little
Get a little bit rowdy.
yeah,
All
a little
right,
rowdy, a little rowdy, a little rowdy.
Barbarians
No,
at
I'm
the gate.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a lot of fun. When you said a bunch of, when you basically said Pilum Press party, I was like, perfect, sold, sign me up. Let's ride or die. Let's go. I don't even care.
So for you guys that are just listening and are going to listen, tomorrow or in the future, long time ago, many years ago, and as in like a year and a half ago, when we first started this podcast, this was primarily a literature podcast. Somewhere along the lines, we went from talking about just books to talking about everything. And lately, it's become the Orthodox Church podcast. But that's all fun. That's all fun. But numerous times, one of my favorite independent publishing house, Pilum Press, we've had numerous of their guys on here. We've had the editor-in-chief, Neil, who is here with us today, of course. And then we've had the author of Shagduk, and we had just them. They joined us numerous times, and we had many episodes. You can go back in time and look at all those old episodes. But today I decided that we're going to have a bunch of these guys because Pilum Press is putting out an anthology of short stories and novel fragments for upcoming novels, and it's coming out right now. And I wanted to have them on so we can talk about their work, talk about Pilum Press, talk about the future of Pilum Press, talk about upcoming novels from Pilum Press, and talk books, because I feel like I have not talked a lot of books lately, except we talked a lot of nonfiction lately, but we haven't talked a lot about fiction. So a kind, warm welcome from the Black Ibis to the Pilum Press posse. What's up, guys? And they're all dead.
Hello.
Hello.
They all got iced. All right.
Sorry.
So we're gonna kind of go around the table and I'm gonna kind of introduce everybody, and you just say hello, because we're gonna try to keep it organized for listeners live and at home. It's gonna be a little bit difficult because give me one quick second. I got some editing to do real quick. All right, I just sent you a message, Brian. So we've got JD Savage. All right, what's up, JD?
Good evening. Hello. Glad to be here.
And we got, of course, the editor-in-chief, Mr. Pilum Press himself, Neil, who's been a frequent guest in the Black Ibis. Neil, good afternoon, evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
Got CD Crabtree and
right here, yeah.
And then Brian Reninger. And Brian Reninger, for you guys that have been in our chat for a long time, is a frequent guest in our chat. So he's always hanging out, which is awesome.
Hello.
So welcome, guys. What's up, Brian? So before we go on and everything, Fisto, how you been, man? We need to do some housekeeping first. So how you been, Fisto?
I have been good. I've been very busy. The highlight of my week since we last spoke was Monday morning. I woke up, got ready for work, drove into work, noticed that traffic was particularly light for a Monday morning. Noticed that there was no traffic at all in front of my public high school. Drove into the parking lot, wondered, where is everyone? Did the school just close up? Am I dreaming? And then, like a smart man, I looked at the calendar and noticed that it was Martin Luther King Day. And went, oh, I had a laugh, crossed myself, drove around the parking lot, and went home. It was fantastic. So that was kind of the highlight of my week so far. It was very funny.
One of those
it was
days
bound
where-
to happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was bound to happen because, like, when it comes to days and when school's going on, I get so zeroed in on the grind that something like this was bound to happen. So it was funny.
Yeah,
Even mad. I'm like 10 minutes from the school, so I just went home. It was fine.
you went home back to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even go back to bed. I just went home. I started doing some chores, making breakfast. Like,
Look at that.
I was like, I'm up. Get to work.
Yeah.
Had a laugh with the kids. Had a laugh with the kids at school the next day. Said, guys, I really do love my job because I showed up yesterday. Where were all of you guys? We had to read chapter 5 of Animal Farm, and you guys were federal holiday. Excuse me.
Nonsense.
So yeah, life is great. Life is great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm still tired. We had a long weekend of church, and we had a bishop visit at our church, and that was fantastic. But that took a lot of effort and work on everybody's part to welcome him. And then we were there all day, and then we went back for liturgy on Sunday, and then yesterday we got invited. It's getting close to Lent, so everybody's doing their house blessings, and we got invited to join our priest and some friends of the family at the church while he was blessing their house, and we all had dinner, and it was a really fun experience because I've had my house blessed before, like a couple months ago actually, but it was fun to go do it with other people and kind of see it just kind of the communal kind of experience of doing that. And definitely house blessings are one of the things that I can see people from a Protestant background having an issue with, or being kind of oh, that's different, but I think they're absolutely fun. Of course, I don't sing because I have the worst singing voice on the face of the planet, and I can't do it. I cannot sing. I can talk for hours and hours and hours, and my talking voice isn't bad, but my singing is absolutely atrocious. It's the worst thing. I sound like how when people they'll do fun karaoke, and it's drunk karaoke, and it's funny. Yeah, it's not funny when I do it
because you're all drunk. We just sound like that normally.
Yeah, but it's not funny at all, even when I'm drunk.
Exactly.
I'm so bad that it's just ugh, you just ruined everybody's night, dude. So yeah, I'm
Dude,
horrible.
Stop, go home.
Yeah.
You've ruined liturgy. Go home.
Yeah, it's just stop. I guess I'll never. Be gone. I'll never be a priest. I just, I'll just go retire in a cave somewhere and become a monk by myself.
Perfect. Yes. Why did you become an ascetic, Alex?
Yeah,
my singing voice was horrible. I was cast out.
I was cast out. I live in the.
I was cast out.
I'll be like one of those pillar monks that lived on top of a pillar or something like that. But I'll live on top of a tree or something.
Not even
a
cast out of the
lamppost.
church. Yeah, just told to go. Just, please. And you didn't even fight it. You see, this is what I like about you, is that you just took it on the chin, man.
Yeah.
When they told you to leave, you were like, you know what? You're right.
You're right. God is telling me to go live on top of a freeway overpass sign, and I'm just gonna live up there and be by myself, and I'll sing to the animals, but they'll just run away. It'll be the opposite.
That's how you get eaten by a bobcat. All right,
Yeah.
You should probably not sing to the animals, considering how the humans treated you. The animals will be a lot less forgiving.
I'm like a druid that has cast scare animal or fear animal. I don't know, Brian. What's the druid spell for like scaring animals?
Oh, you don't scare them, you charm them.
I'm the opposite of charming them. like terrifying cast animal terror. You know.
Yeah. I don't know that one. The
Yeah.
druids are all like trying to make friends with them, you know.
Yeah, no. You know, my dog really likes me though. You know, my dog really likes me. I don't particularly like it. My cat really likes me too. I love my cat. I'm a cat. Are you a cat person or a dog person, Fisto?
Cat person, absolutely.
Me too. I'm a cat person too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why
Like,
we're co-hosts, because of the cats.
The cats are all goth automatically by default, right? And
Yeah.
all cats, even male cats, are like BPD girlfriends. So like I just there's just something I like about cats because like they come by, you kind of pet them, then they're like fuck off and they leave, and it's just the perfect relationship that you have with the cat. Dogs, they want like they're there and they're like and I'm like just like leave me alone. You know, I don't know. I'm just a cat guy. But enough about cats and singing. So Pilum Press. I'm gonna go to Neil first, right? Neil, welcome. I'm glad you're back, and I'm excited to see what you guys have in store for us this year. Like I've been if for you guys at home, if you haven't read any of Pilum Press's stuff, go ahead and write it. I mean, read it, not write it. Read it, right? And
Go ahead and write it too.
write it too. Yeah, there you go. Write it. But you know, your guys' kind of like flagship novel for the last year or two has been Shagduck and its sequel, Ursula of Ulm, and I love everything you guys put out. You know, I know we've got Tim Waltz, Governor Tim Waltz is back. Welcome, Governor. Welcome.
Oh my!
I'm gonna tell you guys.
This changes everything for me.
I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit a secret. I'm gonna give away a little bit of a secret. So Governor Tim Waltz in the chat, right? That's actually a real life friend of mine, and he thought it was funny. I think it's funny, right? He's actually Governor Tim Waltz, but he's been getting his inbox on Substack inundated with boomers telling him that he needs to do something about ICE and stuff, and it's actually pretty hilarious.
Well, is he doing anything?
Well, I don't know. What are you doing, Tim Waltz? What are you doing?
Why hasn't he made this a post? Why hasn't all this been shared with the world?
Well, let me tell you what we've been up to. You know, it's like while the surface is beset with raging storms, I remain safe. I'm deep beneath the earth's crust in my best pajamas. My mustache has grown long, my hair wild. And I've been working on this anthology now, which has taken a ridiculously long time to get to market. Ordinarily, we would have a link to crowdfunding to defray production costs. But it seems that Indiegogo has degraded since the last time we used them.
Oh, geez.
And it's unbelievable how long it takes to get a project approved through them. Anyway, there'll be a link at the Pilum Press site. It's very easy to get to, pilumpress.com. And there's a blog post thereupon. If you really want to know immediately when the funding begins for that, go ahead and sign up for our newsletter. I really don't bother people with any great frequency. Only the most important communications go out, and only then rarely. So prizes, I tend to think about a theme. You know, originally the idea was to do an anthology a year. This one I think has taken us upwards of 18 months, almost 2 years probably. The writing just takes the amount of time it's going to take. So right. I don't have very strict criteria for success. I do for the writing. I mean, for books and you know, maintaining a rhythm. really, I think the only criteria that makes any sense for a publisher nowadays is survival. So we're surviving. We're doing just fine. But the writing and the editing was greatly slowed down by us moving to the country, and all the attendant worries that go with that. But we are in. I believe I got the last proofs from our copy editor just yesterday. So those changes are being entered, and I'll have a press proof pretty soon. So if you join our crowdfunding, you know that you have a 110% chance of receiving the book. It's done and ready to go.
Yeah, I've actually read it. I have it, and I've read the not fully edited. I think it's missing the final passes and stuff. But for you guys listening at home, one of the things that I love about Pilum is that Pilum is an independent press, and it's people that truly, truly love literature and fiction, and they love a fiction that tends to not exist in our contemporary literary world right now, which is
We party like it's 1979.
right, exactly. It is very much a 1979 kind of vibe. But what's really interesting is that a lot of, and I'm not gonna talk ill about anybody specifically or anything. A lot of small independent publishing houses tend to be very much focused on quick output and fast turnaround between, they'll advertise like we're going to take a bunch of writers, and then they'll take the first draft of something, maybe do a quick run through, and then put out the book. Pilum is exactly the opposite. Neil is a stickler for perfection, a stickler for developmental editing, line editing, just hardcore about it. And he has a specific vision. So he will turn away writers that don't match Pilum's vision, or don't jive. They might be great, but they're not jiving with it. He'll push you. He pushes his writers to a very, very high level of that, and that comes from his professional background and the output. If you were to go out and read Shagdick, for example, which if you have not read Shagdick, go read Shagdick. I'm going to link it a million times because it's one of my favorite novels of a few years ago.
It's Shagdick is like a confederacy of dunces crossed with The Exorcist.
Right. That's actually a good way to describe it. Yeah. And he did not join us today. But no, the quality of your guys' output is fantastic, right? And it's always, sometimes I can be like, come on, Neil, put something out. I want to buy it. I want to read it. But you know what? I'm okay with waiting. And I read, when you sent me the proofs of this anthology, I was like so excited to read it. I sat that down and I read it, in basically an entire afternoon. And I really like what you're doing with your anthology collections. And this is the third one, if I'm correct, right?
No, this is our fourth one.
Fourth one, yes. I have them all on the shelf behind me. I don't want to turn my camera on because I didn't put on my face. I didn't put on my face, guys. But I have all of them. And your anthologies, one, they always have a theme. There's always a kind of a tied thematic element in them between the stories, and they're all, you can see that they're not just random stories that people are throwing at you, that there are all pieces that have been developed kind of from the ground up for this anthology. And that's actually a really interesting, fantastic thing that's missing in a lot of the kind of mass-produced indie Amazon only kind of anthologies that used to be popular maybe 5 years ago that everybody was putting out. But I enjoy this one a lot, and I've enjoyed all your work. And what was the theme? What's the theme of prizes? What would you say was the overlying theme? I'm going to let you say it because
Well, prizes came out of a discussion. I was thinking of a prize ship or a prize crew, you know, a crew you put aboard a ship that was captured. So I was the theme is an objective dearly held and achieved via adventure. So you know, whatever that would be. I'm a little bit inarticulate when I'm describing my own theme.
Right.
It's very late here, deep beneath the Earth's crust. So yeah, so I believe it may have come out of a conversation with Renninger, whose offering in this volume is directly nautical. So we're thinking about ships.
Right.
And we tend to look at, you know, this is partly the output of writers I work with individually, and as we get our themes going, you like all prose fiction, you have to be open to constructing your vision along the way. You know, you're building an airplane in flight, and you know, as that vision constructs itself, you know, I sort of look around myself, and I'll solicit people who I think are right to go into the anthology. I think Daniel J. Davies has a terrific piece, which is part of what he's been working on diligently now for I think about a year. There's no doubt in my mind that Mr. Davies will bring this. Will finish a book presently, and we're very, very proud to publish. I don't think we're first with his work, but we're damn near, and so I'm very proud of that. There's another writer named Ivan Kirk, whom I met on Substack, who's lives in Tasmania of all places, and wrote a really wonderfully hallucinatory and unsettling story, reminiscent of Murnane, the great Australian writer. As an editor of an anthology, I mean, anthologies are very different from novels. I think that I don't intervene so much as an editor as one might expect. I mean, it's mostly about expressing the vision that articulating a vision that's maybe poorly expressed, and finding echoes of it out there in the world. But novels, you have to consider a bit differently. I mean, novels take a long time to write, and so you have to really understand what the novelist's project is. Right. And you know, you have to, then you can sort of judge how effective the novelist is in achieving what should be his objectives. Right. Yeah. So,
you know, what's interesting is that, you know, I've been, you know, kind of following your approach, and I've been, you know, you and I've been, you know, friends for a while now. Gosh, it's been like what, 5 years or something like that, or
no, it's longer than that.
I was living in Japan when we first started corresponding, yeah. And you know, and yeah. You've helped edit a lot of my work, and eventually I'm going to get you a novel. Hopefully you will.
Good.
Like, you know, it's
good. Well, I mean, I'm glad for that eventually, because I'm suspicious of things that come quickly and easily.
Right. Well, I've learned, for listeners, I've learned so much from Neil over the years that I like my entire, like, not only your, you know, the editing that you've, you know, done for me and you've helped me with, but the amount of, you know, inspiration and material you've recommended I read. Like I still have a copy of Airships. I like next to me that you recommended I read, and I thought it was a fantastic collection of stories. Just so many numerous, Gatling Canyon. You've recommended so many great collections and authors I've never heard, because you seem to be very like an expert in an era that has kind of fallen off in popularity, which is that 70s 80s kind of era of fiction, of male American fiction, that seems to have completely
Yeah.
fallen away.
Yeah.
And what you've kind of created here, which is what makes you might be the only person doing this. Pilum might be the only crew doing this, because in the time that Pilum's been around, I have seen little tiny publishing presses come up and just disappear. They've done one anthology, maybe two, and then have just disappeared completely. But you've done something that's very different, which is you have kind of built a stable. You've kind of made Pilum very similar to like the old Hollywood studio system, where you've got these guys that you've kind of tested and you've helped develop them. You've seen potential in everybody, and you've worked one-on-one with them in group chats and all kinds of like real work. And I've not seen that anywhere in the independent kind of market, in the independent world. And it's such an interesting thing. It takes longer, but you know what? Good things are worth waiting for. So it's actually a very, very fantastic, interesting concept.
Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, I've been upset about publishing since before I was in it, and so it's nice to actually have an oar in the water, however minimal. I guess it's taken me decades not to talk about how awful publishing is. There's always some new awful thing that comes down the pike every day. I mean, if you go looking for that sort of thing, you find it very easily.
I go to Barnes and Noble all the time, and
yeah. Oh,
I usually buy a cup of coffee is what I usually get.
You won't bait me into complaining about it. Actually, there's some very good news about Barnes and Noble in that they're actually adding brick and mortar stores, which is seems crazy, but it seems like they've changed their buying policy, and they're allowing local managers greater latitude. And
that's true.
What they order. Yeah.
I think they got a new CEO. They got a new CEO a few years ago, and his policy was to kind of pull back from the greater marketing thing. He said, we're not going to be doing, it's not going to become a board game store or like and he's allowed the local store managers and the book buyers to kind of shape the collection of each store based on the location, their own opinions. So it's interesting enough, there is a Barnes & Noble about 20 minutes from where I live, and it's actually a really good one. And they actually have a very fantastic literature section. And I don't know who does it. I don't know who's in charge of it, but the first time I went in there and I'm walking through the aisles and I'm like, oh, look, Celine, Journey to the End of the Night. I'm like, okay, that's not your usual Barnes and Noble fare, and then there's like just tons of good stuff like Italo Calvino, just stuff that like a little bit out there compared to most, what you expect in the big box bookstore. So there's a great collection. They have a really bad history collection though, which is really interesting, and the horrible philosophy section. But
that's okay. There should be, there should be relative advantage among bookstores.
Right.
A bookstore should be good for one thing, and maybe it's not so great for another. So anyway, there are some like small positive signs. Again, our only criteria is survival, and I enjoy working with writers. So, I mean, I'm not making a living off of this, and neither are my writers. So, but then again, no one else is either,
Right.
as the recent congressional hearings have proven beyond all shadow of a doubt. I think it's my intentions with Pilum are partly informed by living in France, and that the publishing environment is much different here. And there's a lot of state money in both the editorial side, but also in supporting bookstores, so that you have it's entirely more serious than the United States, although some French people would howl to hear me say that.
Right.
I would say that they have no idea how bad things are in the US. But the writers themselves are not, there isn't the same sort of prestige competition that goes on in the United States as in France. I mean, if you write a book, it's just, oh, it's interesting, you have an interesting hobby. No one reads through your book in France either. But
right.
It's not considered. I think we're still in a hangover from the 70s about what it is to be a writer, and so you get these very crazy notions about what it is to be successful.
Right. Well, even the 90s, you can say that like the early 90s in like the the Brat Pack, Bret Easton Ellis era, where these guys were 19-year-olds dropping a novel and making millions and living in penthouses in New York off of publishing money. And it's like, yeah, that would have been great. I mean,
that's exceedingly rare, and
right.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of admire the spectacle of it. I don't hate the writing that came out of that time either. I mean, I don't resent those successes in any way.
See, I'm optimistic. I think that we're gonna enter a new era of kind of like an era of discontent, which is a good thing, right? When we're gonna enter, we're gonna have a generation of people that are kind of rejecting. There's a feeling in not just myself, but a lot of the younger generation that I spend time with, that there's a movement towards the analog. There's a love of actual books now, and like people wanting to actually own books. And there's I meet more and more young people that are reading, and I've in the last year or so, I've found myself in many more conversations about books, old and new, that I in the past I've never really gotten unless I was in the right circles. So I'm pretty much, I guess I'm excited about it. But before we go into this huge conversation about the actual industry, let's talk about some of you guys, right? I'm going to kind of go one by one with you guys. And JD, you there?
Yes, sir.
He's dead. All right, so JD, why don't you introduce yourself to us? You're a Substacker with us, so you're by the way, I'm not going in any particular order or rank. I'm going based on what's on my screen. Okay, so JD, you're a Substacker. You write. Go ahead and tell us how you came across Pilum, and tell us about your work.
Well, okay. I guess I'll go with the how I got here first. So I had a story that I was developing, and it was, for the first time in my life, it felt like it was going somewhere. And so I started reaching out to various extant publishers. And of course, either I got ghosted or I got, kindly HR style written rejected letters. And it finally occurred to me, like, hey, wait a minute. Didn't my old Google Plus friend recently published an anthology? Maybe I should reach out to Neil. And Neil actually took the time to read it and get back to me, and promptly beat me into shape.
And then you joined it. So tell us about your story. It's the Syrian Job in the anthology. What's it about? Kind of just without giving away any of the cool stuff in it. What like, because I want to see how you matched the theme of prizes and how you approached that. I'm actually very interested in that.
Well, yeah. So the Syrian job is actually an excerpt of a larger novella. That eventually I hope to get back to the rest of the material, and it comes out of basically my love of Delta Green, of all things.
The role-playing game?
Yes.
Okay.
But so specifically, the Syrian job follows a day in the life of a future mercenary who has perhaps the worst day at the office.
Right. For you guys that aren't familiar with Delta Green is an older role-playing game. I think there's a newer edition, and it's basically it's Cthulhu, Lovecraftian horror in Vietnam. So it's basically, like CIA agents, that kind of stuff.
As like the X-Files meets Lovecraft.
Right, X-Files meets Lovecraft. So it's a very interesting game. I've never played it, but I've read some of the stuff because I like the concept behind it. Yeah, and your story absolutely captures that feel. It's definitely for everybody that's going to read this, this whole collection is a very masculine collection. Okay, we're not talking about introspective kind of feelings and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that because it's a masculine kind of action kind of collection with a literary like splash, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how I really, that's a good way to describe Pilum in a way. It's like elevated action fiction, or because you cannot call a novel like Shag just basic action or horror. It's a very literary novel. But yeah, and what are you working on beyond the anthology? Are you working on a longer novel or novella or anything like that?
I have several irons in the fire. I have an ongoing series on my Substack, The Savage Pen, where I'm working on. This came out of a conversation I had with Dan, Brain Leakage in the chat, who actually has done a piece for prizes as well. So I was brainstorming about like, okay, well, what if Sword Art Online took itself a little bit more seriously, right? And there was a little bit more psychological realism. So it's like, what happens if like essentially veterans of World War I, but it's VR, come out of VR into reality? And so that's the story I'm working on currently on Substack. As well, I have a space opera novel I'm working on, slowly but surely. Okay. So there are projects.
All right. I'm gonna move on through all you guys real fast, and then I've got a bunch of kind of general questions that we can all just kind of chime in. Mr. Crabtree, how about you? How did you end up in the Pilum posse? And what do we got? What do you got for us?
Well, I'll tell you that it was kind of a strange occurrence. I read some stories by this guy called Sky Hernstrom, right?
Oh, that guy.
And that guy, yeah. And I
said,
this is different. This is better. This is like, I grew up, I read the Old Masters, I read all the stuff. I still have books from when I was a kid, all the guys, Vance, everyone else. But I read this, I said, this has a hint of like the real deal. So I sent him an email. I said, I really like your stuff. I asked him a few questions and he responded. And I said, this is good stuff. I said, I'd like to write. I like to write a little bit. He said, well, send me something you wrote. So I sent it to him. He said, well, look, I'll show Neil. I'll show Neil the stuff and see what he says. And Neil said, no to this, yes to this. We can work on this. And we worked on it, and I'm very happy. I mean, I found a good place to be.
Right.
So it was through Sky, and I like the place I'm in Pilum Press. I like what they do. I like the outlook. I like the idea that we're sort of recapturing something, a little bit of something that's been lost.
Right.
That's important.
But David Drake said something that I'm really very proud of in our first anthology, The Penultimate Men. I sent it round to him. He unfortunately he died a few years later. But what he said was that this was like science fiction before the tropes had hardened.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just really wonderful. You never know what you send off books for comment to famous people, and you don't know what's going to come back. And it's been universally complimentary. That's not surprising, but there are insights that you might not have had into your own editorial work. We're very, very lucky to have an introduction written by John C. Wright.
Right. I actually forgot to mention that the introduction to this anthology is by the science fiction writer John C. Wright, which I know a lot of people are familiar with. He read some great stuff, and he's been around. He's been around the block for a while, so that's actually very cool. It's funny, Crabtree, that you were introduced to Neil through Sky, because I too was introduced to Neil through Sky. Maybe maybe a decade or so ago. Sky, I read what was that magazine that was popular for a while in like our circles? Kursova. I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah, right. I have a story published in Kursova.
Right. And I was submitting work everywhere, and I'm like, I'm gonna check out this Kursova magazine, and it was one, I think it was like the first or second issue had like a Sky short story, and I read it and I was like, holy shit, man, this is so good. I'm like, this is so good. I don't remember anything from I cannot tell you one story out of any of those magazines. I'm sorry if I missed it, but I remember Sky stuff. He had like 2 or 3 in like the first few issues, and I'm like, yo, bro, I'm gonna send this dude an email and see what's up with this guy. And we started talking, and we had a lot in common, and I actually ended up hanging out with Sky in outside the Matrix. And I think he's in the chat right now. I saw him log on. And he, he's like, oh yeah, we do a lot of writing and developing with this guy Neil. He's starting his own press, and come join us. And I was like, all right. And then that's how I met everybody through him. And it was interesting. But Sky also has an excerpt, and I'm going to talk about Sky's work in a second. But yeah, I also enjoyed your story in the anthology.
Oh, thank you.
It's got a little bit of a real Russian spin to it.
Oh yes. It's sort of an Eastern flavor. Let's put it that way. Yes.
Yeah, very Eastern flavor. Not right. I'm gonna move on to Brian, Mr. Renninger. Good evening. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
You know what, Brian? I'm always good, man.
Yep.
Brian, man, we've been friends for a while now, almost as long as I've known all you guys, for a decade now, and I've read all your work, and I'm a fan. I actually really, really liked your story in this anthology, which also has a Eastern Russian kind of flavor to it, because it's about the Alaskan gold rush, right? So it's a fantastic story. But how did you end up joining these guys? How did you end up joining the crew? Did you get jumped in or fall off a ship or something? How did it happen?
Well, I guess is back in the Google Plus days, I kind of end up hooking up with Neil and Sky Hernstrom as part of more gaming discussions of war games more, and to my great shame, I am not included in the first anthology because I didn't make Neil's grade, and so yeah, I've been here since the beginning, though not present in the first one, sadly. But it is a testament to Neil's patience that I'm in
Yeah,
the
as
other
a
one.
as a developing editor, how he develops his writers, and I've
Good
seen
Lord.
I've seen the quality of your work drastically improve over the years, Brian. But I mean, you know, there's kind of a common thread going on here, right? And that's kind of why I wanted to ask you guys individually. So you guys in a way represent a generation of writers and readers and fans of literature and culture that has been kind of very much so locked out of the traditional mainstream, right? If there is anything like a traditional mainstream anymore, right? And you guys are there's you guys are doing something, and I'm gonna tell you guys right now, and I want all the listeners to really understand this, right? On whether it's Substack, on X or Twitter back in the day, on the different like social media kind of arguments, there's always been this ongoing discussion in the literary world, which is, "Well, everything sucks, everything's horrible, everything blah blah blah," So we're gonna do our own, but then nobody actually ever does it, right? And the other thing, when people do it, what they do is they end up writing pastiche, right? And the word pastiche is like what it means for guys that don't know what pastiche means. It's basically like an homage to or a complete copy of something else. So everybody's like, "Oh, I love Conan. We should go back to Robert Howard, we should go do that, but then they just write Conan with some of the serial
Well,
numbers called off.
in defense of writing pastiche, I mean that's how you learn to write.
That's true.
That in France, this is a normal stage in a writer's development.
That's
And
true, but you
it's
got to
not
develop. You
it's
got to go
not
past it. Unfortunately, if we're going to have a new
well,
something.
yeah, for sure, but if you think that things are bad in publishing, and you think you have maybe part of the solution, and you have even some people who believe in your ability, it won't do to be too exclusionary.
Right.
I really miss Kursova not being published any longer. I can certainly understand why Patrick Alexander had to. It takes an awful lot of energy, and he put as much energy as he put into it. I think the system came back with 2 or 3 times as much.
Right.
A lot of people are writing now who wouldn't otherwise write without having that forum. So I'm not able to replace it in the way that I work, but he wasn't, writing pastiche wasn't eliminatory. It is eliminatory in literary circles. You can't really get away with publishing at a big publisher if you're really, if you're walking around in your father's shoes, so to speak.
Right.
But I don't think, I think 2 things. I think well, at least 2 things. I think it's okay to walk around in your father's shoes. It teaches you to take longer strides. And that, if there's any hope for readership, particularly male readership, it lies in genre fiction, not in literary fiction. Although, when I write myself, I can't really write genre fiction. I've spent too much time writing literary fiction, and it's very disorienting to write. I could never do what JD does naturally.
Right.
The conceits don't come to me. Good genre conceits don't occur to me really first. So,
Well,
anyway.
And I'm very like I'm actually like that you and I want Fisto to chime in if he's still around. He's hanging out. So what, like, Fist, are you still there? He's there, but he's probably, drinking or something or having fun. Um, I want to talk about male
Hello?
fiction, right? Yeah, you still there?
Ah, yeah. That was odd. No, I'm still here.
So I want your teacher's opinion on this one, right? Taking what Neil said, and I'm gonna ask this question, and I want you to kind of chime in as a teacher because you're in this crew right now. You're the only non-writer. You don't write.
Correct. No.
And I want your opinion on it because you're a teacher and you teach high school, so that's exactly that's going on, right? Um, Boys don't read, all right, men don't read anymore. Like there's there's a few there's a few of us here and there, but for the most part what it seems like the literary world, the even the genre world is filled with women. I got this email from like this book bookshop.com or whatever, because I was doing, I signed up for it, and I get Goodreads emails all the time, and it's just genre fiction, and it's all written by women. And the majority of people I know that read are actually women, and they read a lot of the romantasy stuff, a lot of the kind of mysteries and that type of stuff, all genre for the most part. And there seems to be a dearth in in masculine writing or in the interest of males, right? So how is that in your high school? Kind of what would you think? Do your young guys read at all? Are they interested in reading?
Well, the classroom library that I have only really gets rated by the girls. This year I've had, let's see, what books have I had grabbed? Homage to Catalonia got grabbed. I've had some of my Arthur C. Clarke stuff get taken. A lot of the Spanish Civil War stuff got taken for a few weeks. One of the girls in my class is reading one of the big history books I've got. She's about 400 pages into it, but she's also an exemplar as far as students are concerned. As far as the fellas, man, a lot of the fellas, I could probably only think of maybe one or two that may have any kind of interest in writing. They certainly read 100% because they're in the debate club, and I know that they're reading because all of the things that we talk about, like they are reading for sure. But yeah, no, it's definitely the girls that are doing that stuff. I think the fellas have it in them because I've encountered some very very artistic, creative guys, but they're 15-year-old boys, they're 16-year-old boys,
Right.
in a red county in Florida. They're playing football, right? They're talking to girls. They're playing video games. They're doing teenage boy stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the perspective from the ground. I guess that probably the best or the silver lining I could say is they see me read and they watch me read and they see me write and they watch me write like the essays and like a lot of the work that I do. A lot of the work I do in the classroom is collaborative. So I'm always asking their opinion on stuff I'm working on, and they see it and they like it. And because then they want to hang out and they want to talk and they're like, hey, what are you working on, mister? What are you doing, mister? What are you reading? What are you writing? So like the interest is out there. I think it's a matter of getting them doing it on their own or finding
Right.
something that they want to do on their
Getting
own.
them the right
Setting the
stuff.
example. Yeah, setting
Right.
the example. One thing I've been focusing on this year is the idea that they pay a lot more attention to, they watch me more than they listen. So I've been trying to work on that.
Right. And you know what's interesting, right? And then by the way, for the rest of you guys, please feel free to chime in anytime you want. What I always thought is that the big problem with a lot of boys and young men reading is that our school curriculums are very much feminine. We don't get given a lot of novels that appeal to young men or are appropriate for young men. I look back in high school, and I graduated high school in 2002, so it was a while ago, and it was a very feminine. English was considered, English and literature and all this stuff was a very kind of feminine, like kind of milieu to kind of get involved in. And there was the guys that were into it, but like that was because we were trying to hook up with the girls in the English classes. That's
Yeah,
what we
well,
were.
that's true.
Well,
Alex,
Edgar Rice Burroughs talks about that. Like it's been
Right.
this way for a long time.
Right. That's
It could be the key. You
that-
just got to have hot book hose, and off we go. The fellas start writing.
Hey,
The fellas
Alex,
start writing.
let me say this. Look, I think that one of the things that might affect the male temperament towards reading or anything else is males need exercise. They need action. Action inspires imagination. Imagination works towards writing or reading or any other cultural pursuit that you might think is important. And they don't get that. School has been narrowed down to such, we would be much better off if we had the same schooling program that they had in rugby in the 1800s or a Prussian institution. They're not getting the blood to the brain enough to appreciate it.
Right. No, I think you're right. I think you're correct. And one
Yeah,
thing
that was
I've
Alex.
Go
If I
ahead,
can
Pascal.
interject,
Yeah.
what CD was saying, it struck me as instinctually correct, because what I've been thinking about is, what do the fellows have to write about? They haven't done anything. They haven't done
Exactly.
anything worth writing about. They have no stories to tell. While the guys that, I think about the exemplars, they've done some stuff. Like the one kid I'm thinking of who's in debate class, he's been to competitions. He's getting involved in local politics. He has very strong opinions. He's out there in the discourse. You know what I mean? Like, I've actually seen him pop up in some things where I did not expect to see him there. It was like, oh, you're a little more aware of what's going on. So yeah, it's just they haven't done anything. So what are they going to write about?
Right.
Well, if we consider that that Homer was writing about people who had exercise, let's say,
Yeah.
and the statement that the World War I was won on the fields of rugby, but sadly enough, it still produced some of the best poetry that we've seen in the last 150 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the
Well,
thing.
does
You think of like what was I reading in high school, right? So I look back, and once again, I'm gonna add the caveat that I was a reader. I came from a family of heavy readers, so I was very much influenced by my dad's. And my dad was a guy that he would go. He enjoyed going to like thrift stores, and he would go to like antique stores a lot and that kind of stuff. And you'd always like come back, and his favorite thing to do was go find like used books at like thrift stores, used bookstores and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he would always come up to me and he'd be like, "Oh, look what I found," and he'd give me a book.
Yeah.
But he would give me books, and this is this was a guy that was educated in Eastern Europe, so he was very well read in history and Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, all the big Russians, all the Romanian guys. But he also was very big into like very like action spy thriller stuff. Like one of the books I have on my shelf, my dad actually got it for me and he gave it to me. I think I was in 8th grade. It was Gorky Park. If you guys are familiar with Gorky Park, all the the Shogun, the entire series, Taipan, all those, he loved that kind of stuff. The James Bond novels and stuff that was very, very masculine and exciting. I kind of discovered Tom Clancy around that time, and I got into this whole Rainbow Six, reading Rainbow Six and all the Without Remorse and all the stuff that's now in movies and television shows and actually video games, right? Because all the Tom Clancy stuff's video games. And I mean, it's all about, and I think the question that we must ask ourselves, right, is how did you find a certain book to read, right? Like we don't read books in vacuums, right? For the most part, right? We don't, like, the books that we find and we read, they're usually recommended by somebody, or we find them in an overall genre that we discovered through somebody else, right? And I always tell people like, I work with people that are much younger than me and some that are much older than me. And sometimes I ask them, "Oh, do you like reading? Do you read anything?" And they'll go, "No, I don't really like reading." I'm like, "Well, what have you read?" And they're like, "Well," and they'll list like the school stuff, like the basic school stuff, right? And I've always told myself that, like, I think a significant problem is that what we are lacking is we're lacking a good curating system, right? Because the culture has kind of stepped away from reading. There's nobody to give a book to people. You know what I mean? And
I have something to expand on that. What I've noticed is that a lot of young readers are reading web novels based
right,
around like Chinese and Korean like MMO games.
right, right, because that's their milieu, and they found, and they're reading a lot of it. You know,
Yes.
I worked with, I was, oh man, back in my deployment days. I remember I was on a deployment, and there's like five guys that were all like reading this serialized like novel about some kind of like Chinese kingpin or something like that, some business tycoon, and I was like, but they were reading it religiously, like they were waiting for like like the
The
different like
weekly drop. Yeah.
the weekly drop, and I was like, what? It was something that I was like, I never imagined. And they were like, they would talk about it excited, like I'm like, it's like they were like waiting for like Dostoevsky to drop another chapter of like,
There are,
Crime and Punishment,
there
and
are fantasies, and then there are real fantasies,
right,
and they bought into the real fantasies that aren't even that
right,
have nothing virtuous in them at all.
right. Unfortunately, right. But what I had I don't know if I have a coworker, and he's a great guy, young guy, real young. I mean, 20 years younger than me, right? And we kind of had this book discussion, and he's like, "Oh, I'll recommend the book." And I was like, "Okay, what are you into?" And he's into like, he likes the Cyberpunk 20, the one me and Fist always talk about, right? Was it 2077, right? And
Yeah.
I mean that right there, but I can talk about video games in a bit because that actually really pertains to books, right? But and I was like, okay, so you like excuse me, you guys like sci-fi, you like that kind of stuff. So at the time that he brought this conversation up, Fisto and I were reading Revelation Space, and I was reading Chasm City, and I was like, hey man, you would really like Chasm City. It's like a standalone, it's right up there. And he's like, he comes back a few days later, and he's like, oh, I bought that book and I started reading it, and it's amazing. Right. And I'm like, okay. And he's been carrying that book around for like the last 2 months because I see it in his truck. Like he has it like on his dashboard. And he comes up to me and he's constantly talking to me about it, And I'm just like, okay, that's the key, guys. All right. The key is that we are missing people to tell people what to read. All right. There is, when you go into literary conversations, it's dominated by, by literary kind of women, and people will be like, oh, check out the latest book by the New York blah blah blah, and it's like that girl's like blog posts about sleeping around in Paris or whatever. And what's a 22-year-old dude gonna be into that? Nobody's gonna be into that. You know what I mean? Right? There's a complete and total like lack of curation for certain subgroups of the population, and I don't know, how do we get these guys reading? Like, how do we get books to them? And I'm not even talking about like new stuff. I'm talking about how do we get these guys to read stuff that's like like, hey, you like James Bond? Well, why don't you actually read the books? Or
Yeah,
like
well, I've started writing a series about reading James Bond on Substack. I just had the first one up, and I got the second one going to come up sometime soon. But yeah, I think you're 100% right that in the old days there were book review columns within magazines. There was magazines. Now it's on your phone, and which is 90% nowadays AI crap. And so the question is, piling through the haystack is, how do you get the people who actually know something about it and have the influence to tell other people about it and be listened to? It's like we need some sort of like that Looksmax weirdo um, uh, on TikToker
right.
who will tell people to actually go read something, because to me, there really isn't a place that anyone can trust anymore. And I don't know where that is. Even the schools which is a question I have for Fisto. I remember back when I was in high school reading the Iliad and not liking it, and then Years later, I realized that the version we read in high school was expurgated. Basically, all the action scenes were taken out. Just plot was left. And similarly, in high school in Candide, all the racier parts of Candide were taken out. And so the things that would have attracted teenage me to liking those books had been removed. Not that I write very racy stuff, or not even the most action necessarily, but like you said, the things that would appeal to the young guys aren't being pushed through our institutions anymore.
Right.
But for Fisto, I was just wondering, like, when you're giving books out, do they at your school, is there any like expurgation, or because the ones we got weren't the real things?
Right. So
Um,
you should know that I'm a social studies teacher. So this I'm in kind of a weird spot. I say that because whenever I try to provide content or I give something to the students to read, I always try to go for the real stuff, even if it's way above what they are capable or even, are able to do. Because I'd much rather them try and fail miserably than just, deal with crap, which is basically what you were describing.
Right.
The abridged versions of things is definitely a struggle. They've been having us focus on literacy the past couple of years during the second semester. So this debate class I'm doing is really just an excuse to get them to read stuff. We're doing Animal Farm right now, which it is the unabridged Animal Farm, and it strikes a good balance because it's difficult enough, but it's not quite out there so far. So that's always seems to be a great book to start with because it kind of gets the kids like sold into it, the best example I can give from last year, and I'm going to see how it goes this year, is we did a abridged version of Jekyll and Hyde, which isn't bad, but it has all the problems that you describe. And the murder scene when Jekyll just beats that dude down in the middle of the street, I showed them the real version of it, and we read the real version of it, and it's just so incredibly dramatically different. The dead cat bounce and like everything in there, and there was a energy, there was a sense in the classroom of, oh, holy shit, like what? And I'm gonna mess around with that more this year. But yeah, that abridged thing is definitely the problem. But I haven't quite figured out, I haven't been doing the teaching thing for all that long yet. I haven't quite figured out how to get the real stuff and break through into the souls of the students. One thing I'll say though, this is a huge problem, is the focus on making sure all of the kids have access, that all the kids have an equitable education, experience, which in practice means you have to dumb everything down and
Right.
blah 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 blah. I don't want to go
Right.
off on that tangent per
It's,
se. So I mean,
no
it's a struggle.
No child
Yeah,
falls behind really means no child gets ahead.
Right.
Right.
No child does anything
most
worthwhile
most
ever.
of these problems we're discussing don't have easy solutions at all.
They absolutely don't.
I think that there are two things I would like to see as a publisher. The first would be to give books as gifts to people you know.
Yeah.
If someone's in your house and they pick something up, just to look at it, just give it to them.
Yes. That is 100%.
You know what's funny, Neil?
Absolutely.
Actually, I just made it a
take it.
personal rule. I made it a personal rule that every time I talk about a book or something, I give a copy of my book, and I don't expect it back. I just go on. I just go by.
That's right. Here's the other
Yep.
thing that you can do. If you read a good book, write to the writer in care of the publisher and say why you thought it was good. You have no idea how unbelievably lonely it is on the other side of the page. It's something that I learned to do very early on. At the very least, I have some very interesting correspondence in my file. Yeah, write a letter on paper and send it to either the agent, if you can find it, find the agent, or to the publisher. Do those things, and the world will get better. It won't happen overnight, but that's all I got for you on that question.
Well, that's right, and dumbing down the curriculum is actually not new, because I'm 20, I'm 20 something years out of high school now, and I remember my senior year, I was pretty literature heavy because I've always liked reading, and I had two literature classes. I had a British lit class, and I had it was called a multinational or international literature class, and I had a really great teacher. Actually, I had good teachers for both. And in the British lit class, we read some Shakespeare, we read Frankenstein. We went into Canterbury Tales. But in the international lit class, for some reason, it was like the Brit lit class was an AP class. The other class was kind of like a dumb class that I needed an extra credit for, but it was we had a great teacher. And right away, she realized in the class that I was like, oh, this is not going to be a heavy thinking class. Right? She looked around and was like, this is a senior class. Half the people just want to graduate and get the hell out of here. And she knew I was going to fail it. She's like, man, you're going to fail it, Alex. You're going to, like, if you stick here, you're going to get bored and you're just not going to show up. And she was right. I was 18. I was like, I'm coming to stupid class. And she looked at me and she goes, I'm going to give you a book. I want you to read it and come back in 2 months. You don't have to come every day. Just come back in 2 months after you read the book. And she gave me the Brothers Karamazov, actually. And I was like, okay, this is a big book. And I started reading it and I was like, it just blew my mind. It became my favorite novel. To this day, it's still my favorite novel. And I came back and she gave me, War and Peace. And I'm like, okay, she's dropping the good stuff on me. And this is stuff that like I was familiar with, but I was never forced to read it for school. So I just kind of was like, oh, I'll read it when I'm older. I'll read it later. And it blew my mind, and I think that, we need teachers like that, that identify individual students and figure out what they're attracted to and kind of give it to. In the chat, there was I want to read the chat for posterity's sake, right? Brain Leakage says he had a nephew who was a religious Halo player, right? So he's one of your boys, Fisto, right? A Halo guy. Fisto's a Halo, and
yeah, boy, we're talking about that in chat right now.
Right, that's what I'm reading the chat right now for everybody. So Brain Leakage said the only books he wanted to read were Halo tie-ins, and then his mom asked Brain Leakage like, "Hey, give us some book recommendations." And Brain Leakage said more Halo books. Of course, she didn't do that, and she got him a collection of other books like lit stuff and all this kind of stuff, and made her kid read that over the summer instead of the Halo books, right? And what the kid learned was that books suck and he hated reading, right? Which seems to be kind of a theme with a lot of boys, right? That like we're excited to read all this kind of stuff. And like I used to like reading Magic the Gathering books in middle school, okay? And we like to read books, and we're kind of forced in school or by parents or by, like intellectual types to not read what we love reading, and then we just learn to hate reading. And that seems to be a theme almost in everybody, right? A lot of people like, for example, will dog on, like I read to my daughter almost every night, okay? Like my wife and I read to my daughter almost every night. And one thing we noticed is that we will just read. Sometimes we'll just read to her whatever we're reading, give or take appropriate level, right? And my wife one day was reading, somebody gave her a copy of the Hunger Games, which is it's a YA novel, right? But they're like, oh yeah, you should read this. This is a really fun book. And my wife's like, yeah, I'll read it. And she started reading it, and she was reading it to my daughter. And my daughter's 7 years old, and my daughter just was absolutely like enthralled by this book, right? She just loved it. All right. And every single night she would be like, all right, let's go read together, and we read the entirety of that book, right? And I got into it listening to my wife read it. I was like, I want to know what happens to Katniss. I want to see what happens next. But we do tend to have a tendency to like poo-poo those kind of books, like, oh, YA fun novels and stuff, But they're great books for the kind of people like Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter, people that like, people read Harry Potter. And I don't know if you guys seen those books, but they're massive novels, right? And somehow the marketing world or the literary world somehow failed at making those Harry Potter readers jump that extra step. Like what next? I think that in Harry Potter, guys, there's probably a lot of people that started with Harry Potter and ended up in Tolkien, and that from there on, right? But there was this complete and total like segregation of that group of people from the greater like market. And it's like, the question is why? Why not? Like, look, we read books that, in high school and stuff, right? That really like, they're only considered like great literary works by the fact that they're old. You know what I mean? And because some of them are like, maybe that's not that great, right? Like, Catcher in the Rye is a good example of like, you're kind of like a little bit overblown on its literary greatness, in my opinion. So why don't we read Harry Potter in middle school, or high school? Why isn't that assigned to people, right? Why isn't The Hobbit assigned to people, right? And it really like shocks me that like there's these thought processes where like they don't do that, and I don't get it. I don't know what your guys' opinion on that would
Alex, I think a big part of it. This is something that happened earlier in the semester. A lot of the people that lead our public schools are fucking retards. I had a district guy ask me to remove the Communist Manifesto from my bookshelf, and he acted as if it had like mystical powers to just like it was the Eye of Sauron, and it would just like convert children to communism. I'm like, dude, you're not fucking Liberty Prime. Shut the hell up. Like, I got rid of it because it was not a battle worth fighting, and besides, I know all this stuff anyway, so I'll just tell the kids about it anyway. I don't give a shit. But no, I sorry guys, I hate to come out guns blazing here, but that's a huge part of it. The vast majority of the people in our public schools are morons, and they don't even read this stuff. They can't even teach this stuff. They do the abridged versions because they're dumb.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. That is,
it's absurd.
I had a close friend. Who was teaching the accelerated class, or whatever they call it, called it back then. They would not let them teach Beowulf.
Oh, for crying out loud.
But no, parents called in. There's a monster, and the monster kills people. It's not good. Children's can have nightmares.
So that eliminates like every book like out there.
Well,
right?
kills the monster, you
eliminates Western culture.
Yeah. That eliminates the entire canon of Western, Eastern, and all canons of literature.
By the way,
it's all gone.
Can you even read the Bible? Because the Bible has a lot of killing in it, guys. I don't know if
and monsters.
Extra money for teaching the class because she had a PhD.
Right.
For a 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade class, that's a big deal.
Right. It's wild. That is wild,
And to me, it's like not only people are going to college now that are not really literate or numerate, and to me it's a big detriment, because in order to do sophisticated things like writing something, you have to have a background in a bunch of stuff. You have to have been exposed to things, and a lot of things. Like just sitting here, I made a little list of books that I drew on for write my one little short story in this anthology. And it's, 7 different things. There's probably more than that even. And
right.
and so if someone's going to write a novel, let's say, and a lot of people maybe have, dreams of doing that, you have to have read a lot in order to have enough to draw upon to put that much down on paper. Right. Even if it doesn't look like it. on the page. It
Right.
may not, nobody may be able to make those connections, but there
Right,
are
because like Cormac McCarthy says, books are made of books, right?
Yeah.
And books are made of books, and two people reading a book, not together, but two people reading the same book, it builds a connection between you. It is a cultural glue, that is sadly diminishing because, like, hey, Fisto, you and I read Revelation Space together. We've actually read a lot of books together, right? And we know each other because now we know how we think, because we know how we
Yeah.
reacted to those books, right? So we are
Yeah, man.
closer because of that, as people. And it's, you know, even doing this podcast where we talk about books and people join us in the chat and people comment on the different the different posts and stuff, it makes a connection with humans, like an actual real connection by a shared communal experience, right? And we cannot lose that. We talk about tradition and all this stuff. We cannot lose that. Okay, we cannot become isolated, gooners living in our goon caves, completely, separated from all of us. What's really, so I think one thing that we need to think about going forward as writers is that, how are we going to rebuild, how are we going to get these books out to people, right? And I think that, I honestly think that going after different channels and kind of doing our own thing is the right way to do it. And the way Pilum is doing, kind of, doing its own thing and building a brand that's separate. And I hate the word brand. It sounds so gay, but like, and then, overall kind of like sticking to the things, that matter, right? Do I have another coworker, a young guy, also 21-year-old, right? And you know what I got him into? I got him into Cormac McCarthy, all right? And basically half my workplace has read Cormac McCarthy now because of my incessant Cormac McCarthy fandom, right? And you know how many inside jokes about like Blood Meridian we have right now? Like there's like a constant, like somebody sent me a picture the other day on like a group chat of like an outhouse. There was this little outhouse, and he's like the judge gonna get you. And we're talking about 21-year-old kids, right, with not even a college degree, like sending me Cormac McCarthy jokes, which is like hilarious when you think about it, and it's awesome when you think about it, right? And that's the key, man. That is the key, right? Is sharing your, like Neil said, give those books out, give the books out to friends, get them involved in reading, and get them out. I do want to switch kind of directions a little bit, and I want to talk about your guys' influences, right? Because books are made of books, right? So what are some of the great influences you guys have on your own writing? And you know what, I would like it if you guys would please don't say like Dostoevsky, because we all know Dostoevsky. Let's go something more like your more obscure influences, the kind of stuff that the listeners can go, let me go read that. And I'll make sure I'll take links, and that way I recommend the books in the chat, because we'll be doing exactly what I'm talking about here, right? So you guys want to start? Whoever wants to start.
Let me read the frontispiece to prizes. It was just something that I came across. I'm always reading and rereading, so I don't know why, but last week a couple of weeks ago I reread Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is Philip K. Dick's 1966 novel that was later the basis for Blade Runner, as you all know. But anyway, I came across this this exchange between J.R. Isidore, who's the genetic technician, and Pris the android. In the movie, I believe J.R. is J.R. Sebastian. They changed the name for the movie. Anyway, J.R. asks, "Did you bring any of that pre-colonial reading material back with you?" It occurred to him that he ought to try some. Pris answers, "It's worthless here because on Earth the craze never caught on. Anyway, there's plenty here in the libraries. That's where we get all of ours, stolen from libraries here on Earth and shot by auto rocket to Mars. You're out at night bumbling across the open space, and all of a sudden you see a flare, and there's a rocket cracked open with old pre-colonial fiction magazines spilling out everywhere. a fortune. But of course, you read them before you sell them. That's actually the motivation for why the androids came to Earth. In the movie, they want to confront their creator, but in the book, they just want to recover old science fiction.
That's awesome.
So Dick always amuses me. I don't. He's not a very strong stylist, I don't think, but his conceits are always very sharply drawn and always worthwhile. So anyway, that is retrospectively inspiring to me as an editor.
We're kind of the replicants now, then.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I'm hoping, if Pilum has a mission, it's to publish the kind of fiction that would spur war and piracy among the androids.
Hopefully we don't get Blade runned,
They're trying.
Yeah.
They're trying.
So Brian, what are you reading? What's your inspirations, man?
Well, for this story that I wrote for this anthology, the inspiration was really a painting by Howard Pyle called The Grain Ship, which was an illustration for another story called The Grain Ship by Morgan Robertson. I can't say it's a great story, but it is a great painting. And I think if you read the story, you'll see where that painting comes in the story. So look it up, The Grain Ship by Howard Pyle. But the other thing I would say, which I don't think anyone would make the connection, even though the island shows up in the story, is the book called King Island Christmas. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's by a woman, Jean Rogers, who was my grade school librarian. And she wrote this kid's book called King Island Christmas, was based on a true story. And it was illustrated by another Alaskan painter, Ray Munoz. And it's a great book. It's about this island in the middle of the Bering Sea called King Island. It's now uninhabited, but back then there were natives living there, and they had a church. And the story's about, it's a stormy day, and they're trying to get the priest off the boat, the transport ship that's taking him to the island to be their priest, and they can't because it's stormy. And the transport ship can go into the lee side of the island where the waters aren't as rough. But to do that, the natives have to carry their umiak over the top of the island and back down the other side to get him. And so it's a story of getting the priest to the island in time to celebrate Christmas. It's a great book. It's short. It's a kid's book. You could read it to a toddler, with amusing illustrations. And in recent years, I think they made a musical of it, which is kind of crazy. Which also is a good musical. I've listened to it, a recording of it. And so King Island Christmas, I don't think anyone connected to my story, which is more grim, but it's part of the inspiration. I'd recommend it.
That's awesome. I'm actually looking it up right now. It's Deborah Beaver.
No, it's Jean Rogers.
Jean Rogers. Okay.
That might be the musical. I'm not sure.
I think that is the musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I recommend get the CD of the musical. It's fun to listen to.
I've never heard of that. That's actually really interesting. Yeah. What would you say is your overall, what's your favorite writer, Brian?
Oh gosh. Favorite writer. I have a real hard time saying favorites, but Patrick O'Brien's up there, Robert E. Howard's up there, Manly Wade Wellman's in there somewhere, H.P. Lovecraft is in there. A lot of the weird tale writers, Clark Ashton Smith, they're all
that's my
all
favorite. That's my favorite weird tales guy.
Oh man, Clark Ashton Smith, he's great.
I always felt like that. JD, how about you, man? I know you got different eclectic tastes based on your writing.
Well, so if you ask me, one book or one author that most directly influenced how the Syrian Job ended up, that has to be Gustav Hasford and his novel The Short Timers, which eventually became a much more famous movie. But I think anyone who enjoyed the movie should do themselves a favor and read the book.
You gotta tell everybody what movie is made out of that book.
The Short Timers became Full Metal Jacket.
Okay, thank you. I knew that, but just in case.
just for everyone at home, yes. I could very clearly draw a line between my writing before reading Short Timers and my writing after. Other than that, authors, Edgar Rice Burroughs is just a revelation. John Norman, the weird authors, Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith, of course. Military science fiction writers like David Drake. So you're putting me on the spot, but
well, how about this question, man? How about this, right? Were you always a reader?
Did
you grow up
yeah.
reading?
I grew up reading. My father started reading Narnia to me as a child, and at some point I took over and was reading them for myself. And shortly after I read The Last Narnia, The Last Battle, I was moving on to things like David Drake and Dragonlance and
all that stuff, right?
It was off to the races. And my strategy for not being annoyed at high school literature was to just crack open my book and then have my paperback inside.
So you were the guy that carried like the cool like Dragonlance stuff with you and was reading the giant book, right, with like the dragon on it and the hot girl. What's the Forgotten Realms art that's in all those books? That famous D&D painter that did all the covers. He did the Wheel of Time stuff too and everything.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but the name slips my mind. Actually, in high school, I was mainly into Heinlein. I was huge into it. Was my libertarian Heinlein phase.
Nice. Did you read? Okay, all right. So okay, that's interesting. How about you, Mr. Crabtree? What are your inspirations? Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Well, the old school ones. Obviously, I grew up in the redistribution of the old classics: Clark Ashton Smith, Leiber, Howard, the rest. Vance, of course, my favorite. I love Jack Vance. They've all influenced me, but I can't find any one source that I've copied or whatever. I just do what I can do,
Right. Were you always a reader growing up, or?
Yes, absolutely, yes. I still have some books from when I was a teenager up on the shelf. No, absolutely, yes.
Did your parents read too?
Actually, weirdly, no, they weren't. They weren't readers. They were intelligent, quite intelligent, but they weren't readers. And they took me to the library, a tiny library that had just started back in the 60s, 70s, whatever. And the woman there, who I really fear was a cat lady librarian, but she was very nice and I loved her. Her name was Judy. I've never forgotten her name. Introduced me to Robert Heinlein. She said, "You must read these books. I love these books." And I read them. And I read the others and all the others she suggested in that tiny library. But, that was the start of it. The people who influenced me were the ones Clark Aston Smith is excellent.
All the big ones.
Yes,
so it's interesting.
There's one.
Interesting that like
Ernest Brahma. Have you heard of him?
I've never heard of Ernest Brahma.
You
Anybody
must
else?
look him up. He is brilliant. He wrote 2 books back in the late 60s. And no, it was earlier and never seen again.
Kind of disappeared.
And E.R. Edison, The Worm Ouroboros. If you haven't read that, you should.
Yeah, I have read that.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? All across the board, you guys all described exactly what I was talking about. Right? That like you're introduced to what you love to read by an older figure, whether it's a parent, a librarian, a teacher, and that kind of stuff. Right? And I think that is Fisto, that's what you got to do, man. That's what we have to do, right? We have to introduce people to reading. I mean,
yes.
You brought up the Worm of Ouroboros, right? And that's an interesting book to bring up because that's actually tends to be pretty popular in my generation. And the reason it's popular in my generation is because of Neil Gaiman, right? Like sometimes like you have like authors that are that make it big, like Neil Gaiman did, and his influences become more mainstream or re-brought to the fore, right?
Exactly.
Neil Gaiman is responsible for bringing back making what do you call it, the Goblin Market popular again, which was a book that kind of got lost, and he kind of re-brought that whole like genre of the kind of like surreal fantasy that went away from your Dungeons and Dragons-esque quest kind of stories into more like fairy market fantasy, that's his Sandman stuff and everything. And that brought back a lot of like familiarity back into the kind of the mainstream fantasy world due to his popularity, now his infamy now. But
well, we didn't do that.
Yeah, well, I'm a sorry guys, everybody in the chat, I'm a Neil Gaiman supporter. Okay, all right.
I have no idea, but
I don't care.
He also wrote an intro, and he may have been instrumental in getting it republished. Is the book "Blood in the Mist" by Hope Merrilees?
Right.
Which I think is a great book.
And I think she also wrote The Goblin Market, right?
Yeah, that's an old classic that's lost. Yes.
I don't know about The Goblin Market. The Goblin Market, all I know is a poem by Rossetti.
Or maybe Blood in the Mist isn't. Maybe that's what I'm thinking, but I feel like it gets like he brought it back. He made it really popular in like
yes,
art host circles. And I wasn't thinking of The Goblin Market, even though he did bring that into popularity. But I was thinking of Blood in the Mist. That's exactly what I was thinking.
They like to demonstrate that as an early female fantasy that was accepted and well liked, but I don't know that if that's why he did it or not.
I think it really matches his style, like his kind of vibe.
It's good. I'm sure it's very good.
And I thought of another thing as far as influences. Like when I was a kid, my father had a whole bunch, and he still has them, of anthology collections from when he was a kid in the 1950s. That were year's best fantasy and science fiction anthologies that were put out each year. And, there I got exposed to a whole bunch of different writers and different kinds of stories. Like one of my favorite that still sticks in mind is a story called Stickney and the Critic by Mildred Klingerman, which is Stickney's this monster that lives in the well, and this literary critic ends up getting eaten by him. I think anthologies are a great way to get kids into reading because you can just pick one story and read it. It's not like an insurmountable
Well, Reddinger, they
goal to
always
read the
were.
whole thing.
They always were.
Yeah.
I always wondered why like English classes didn't use anthologies more, like or like pick random books. Like that would always make sense to me, like like take a anthology book or like a lit magazine and like photocopy it and then, use that to teach.
Yeah.
That just makes sense to
And
me.
and of course we're selling an anthology, so it would be a great
Right.
way to help people get reading. But yeah, The Goblin Market is by Christina Rossetti, which I think is a great poem, by the way, and everyone
Right.
should read it.
But Alexander, Alex, how do you feel about poems in the fantasy realm, fantasy science fiction realm? There are people who do them. They're not very common, but what do you think?
So we actually had a poet on the show. Do you remember that one, Fisto? We had a poet on the show. It was fun. And
The real Gonzo kid.
Our Gonzo poet, right?
Yes.
And with poetry, I've always been, when it comes to poetry, I'm a Bukowski guy. Okay, that's just kind of where I sit.
Bukowski is great. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe because it's how it was taught to me. It's like I always like associated poetry with like the classics, like obviously like the Shakespearean sonnets and everything. But then also Bukowski's like the 20th century kind of stuff that I like. Excuse me. And I actually have an entire shelf of poetry that I tend to like. I mean, let me pull out something real fast because I was reading some right now.
Yeah, sure. Bukowski's great. I love him. I call him deadbeat aristocracy, but that's just me.
Right. I mean, I like Wallace Stevens, right? Like I enjoy Wallace Stevens, and that's another big 20th century one that was I love the fact that he like was fist fighting Hemingway or whatever the story about that goes. I like Bukowski. I like Sylvia Plath a lot, actually. Like my wife likes Sylvia Plath, and she's like, "Oh, you really should read her." And she got me a collection of Sylvia Plath poems, and I really enjoy it. Like it's a different art form than writing a novel or a short story. It requires like a different mindset. I think that every writer should write poetry, but I think that every writer that writes poetry should not share their poetry. That's actually kind of a good.
Absolutely agree with you, my brother. That's exactly what I've done.
Our second anthology, The Wells of Ur, features a poem, which is really quite good. I'll read it to you. The Wells of Ur. When our city was undermined by the sea, the last spirits were decanted into clocks indifferent to the liquors by which the hours were kept. It was worse once the sea withdrew from the quays. We watched the moon consume itself, brewing tea laden with lower salts. We knew we would wind us to a sooner stop. We brewed tea laden with the lower salts. Barges became camels, became peddlers, addled by wide horizons. Our ships stood on their keels. Our dead became denatured. Our hollow wells howled to the stars. The evening wind rose to meet the absent tide. Breezes haunt the sheepfolds. The campfires of a nomad horde, discreet beyond the rubbled walls, fearful of our vaulted ruin. Our thoroughfares bathe under the light of hostile constellations. We once drank from beneath the sea, from beneath the storied earth beyond, from wells not sunk from above, pushed up from a higher world. And yeah,
No, that's not bad.
Still available. Still available.
That's excellent.
Good.
That's excellent. And yeah, I think that genre of poetry, it's a genre that it's difficult. You won't find it. I think that the problem is that the kind of people that write poetry are we live in a world of hyper irony, and that's kind of the problem with this, right? Which is everything has to be like you see this in a lot of the independent like masculine fiction writers right now, that almost every one of the novels that are out that they get shared on Substack a lot tend to be very ironic. They're in kind of an extension or continuation of David Foster Wallace type writing. And I think that the main reason is because we're masking our writing with irony because we're afraid of people coming after us or whatever. And if you're like some cool guy that wants to be like the cool guy with the girls, you're not gonna be as open. So you kind of, I don't know, you kind of hide under this layer of cool guy irony. And I have a feeling that one day in the very near future, somebody's gonna start dropping that completely, and that's when we're gonna start getting the real good stuff out there. And I think maybe poetry will come back as a more popular art form, but we'll see, right? What we need is a in a way a revival that's moving forward at the same time. Um, that's awesome, guys. Hey, so we're getting close to the end of the show. I loved having you guys on here. I mean, it was a tough show because I've got 5 people and I'm trying to bounce everybody and join all these topics. For everybody that just joined us live or is listening to this later, this is the crew, the anthology of Pilum. This is not everybody in the Pilum anthology, right? Unfortunately, some of the other writers could not make it, and I don't think this program could have supported everybody. But I'm counting the amount of stories right now. How many stories was it?
There are 9 stories.
9 stories.
5 of which are excerpts from novels.
Right.
Which present company include Brian Renninger.
Right. So what about these novels, Neil? When are the novels coming out?
That's up to the novelists. Each project varies. So, it could be tomorrow. It could be a year or two. Since Sky Hernstrom's name came up earlier in the conversation, the story, he has a story in there which is an excerpt from a novel that he wrote. He's writing right now. He completed a novel, a fantasy novel, which is in drafts, but he began another as I was editing it. So I think he's going to finish this new novel before he gets back to the fantasy novel, and it's quite an exciting piece. I think Alexandra, you've seen some of it, so
right. So I will say for you guys that are not familiar with Sky, his name is Schuyler Hernstrom. You can Google him and you can find all his work on Pilum Press. He is hands down, my opinion, the best sword and sorcery fantasy writer out there. Hands down, no debate. No debate. I'm not even gonna I'm not even going to argue about it. Okay.
I love Sky. I love Sky.
And I'm not the only one that says this. This is like somebody like you can accuse me of being biased. You can accuse me of being biased, but I'll bring Lisa Kuznak on here, a friend of the show, and she has no connection to Pilum, and she will say the same thing.
Of course.
And numerous other people will say the same thing. Once you read his stuff, you're basically like you've become an acolyte, a devotee of Sky, right? And this is like me not BSing, right? Fisto, you got to read his stuff, okay? I gotta give you some of his stuff because I don't think you've read his stuff yet. But I fell in love with his work like 10 years ago, and I've read every
Perfect.
like if he writes, if he like sends me something like in like a text message, I will read it, right? And he did he did just that, like
well we have to be the change we see in the world. So yes, mail me the books. Heck, come on down here.
Do it.
Hand them to me.
I will hand you the books, right?
Do it. Yes,
I
do
will
it.
inspire.
Yeah, but
Cool. Look forward to it.
So he messaged me a few months ago and he's like, "Hey man, you want to read this book I'm writing?" And I'm like, yeah, dude, just now send it to me, right? And he sent me, and it was like a bunch of chapters. And I am not even lying that I stopped doing everything I did. And I think it was, he sent me enough material to almost make it like, half a novel, right? So it was like a full novel's, almost a full novel's worth of stuff. And I sat down and I read the whole thing in one afternoon. That's all I read it. And it is, without a doubt, once this book comes out, I'm not even like lying to you guys, right? Once Pilum puts this book out, it is gonna be the book. Okay. I am like not blowing smoke. I'm not lying. This book is amazing, right?
Right.
And I broke the rules. I broke the rules a little bit, right? I was like, okay, I'm gonna share this with a friend that I work with. And I wanted to do it because I wanted to get a perspective from somebody that's a lot younger than me. And this guy, he's 22 years old. He read the whole thing in like one shift on his phone, right? And he's like, this is like 4 or 5 months ago. He keeps on texting me. He's like, hey man, when's your friend putting out that book? I'll finish it, Like he keeps on texting me about it. And I'm like, okay, like it's that good, guys. Like, so I highly recommend you guys get the anthology because I think it's the first chapter or so, right? It's like the first few
That's right.
chapters. Yeah. And it is the craziest thing. It starts off with a guy stealing a dinosaur bone from a museum.
Oh,
And
yeah, it's
something like that
We-
without
buy the
ruining it.
book and find out for yourself.
Yeah, like I don't want to
You'll love
ruin
it.
anything, but it's amazing. It's going to be hands down one of the, like, and I love everything Pollen puts out. I mean, when Neil sent me the first edition of Shag Duck, I read that in like 24 hours. I just basically sat. I was actually like working in Papua New Guinea, or maybe I was in Timor. No, I was in Papua New Guinea, and it was a Sunday. I woke up completely hungover from like 20 gin and tonics and partying all night with cannibals. And I spent all day reading Shag Duck, and I was like, it was an experience, you know? But yeah, I highly recommend you guys pick up everything from Pilum and everything from Sky, and which is everything from Pilum also, because Sky is, Pilum writer. And I, really, really recommend that when Neil gets the crowdfunding set up for the prizes anthology, you guys support independent publishing and, throw them the few bucks to get the book, and Neil delivers. Neil's fantastic. Pilum is fantastic. And it was a pleasure having you guys on, man. I really appreciate you guys joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Fista, you got anything for us?
No, man. Guys, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to Alex's post with this episode, where it will be a 80-minute read of book recommendations. So plenty to do for the rest of our lives. Can't wait.
Right. Well, that's what we like to do, okay? Because we like to, like there's this I don't know, there's this joy and pleasure in sharing a book with somebody and then that person really enjoying the book. And it creates this connection between you and another human being that's just amazing, like, and I love that. I love sharing something with people. And I don't know, that's the whole point of this show, right? That's the whole point of, everything we do, right? Like, we're trying to make connections with people and share things. And yeah, and then it's important that we keep writing, we keep creating art. We want to, in a way, look, we're in the digital space right now, right? We're in the cyber psychosis land, but in a way, we're trying to break out of the machine and return to an era of creation where we actually do something with our hands, do something with our, our souls, with our brains, with our hearts, right? And you can't get better than that writing wise, And I've been really, on Sunday night, I was tired. I just finished basically 2 straight days of being at church, and when you get so tired that you can't even go to sleep anymore. You're like just beyond tired, but you're like wide awake. And I had a bottle of wine, and I decided, well, I'm going to watch a movie. So I'll watch something easy, something quick, something fast, right? So then I decided to watch Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev,
Yeah.
because it's a quick movie, only 3.5 hours, right? And so I started it like around 11:30 p.m., and I ended up opening another bottle of wine halfway through the movie because I was like, that's a long movie. I need more wine. And I mean, the movie is a reflection of spirituality, but it's also a reflection of art and how art pertains to spirituality. And it really, I've been just kind of thinking about it for the last, few days since I watched it. And it's just, that's what we're put on this earth to do in a way, right? Like create, creating is it's we're not creating for our own egos, right? We're creating because creation, our sub creation, like Tolkien would say, right,
Right.
is a gift to God, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Sub-creation is our endeavor. That's what we're supposed to do.
Right. And it's like, and not only should we do it, we should do it, not because we're trying to get financial gain for it,
We
or
should do it with glory to God.
right, with joy and with joy and with
Yes.
glory. And that's why I'm like I've realized that, like, we can talk about changing the culture and doing this or doing that, and all our Substack conversations about this, the usual like opinions that all of us have, but really that doesn't do anything, right? Putting pen to paper, and getting it out there, that's doing, putting, brush to canvas, putting, doing your art, doing something, right? And also really supporting the small creators, right? And I hate that word creators, but like supporting the independent people, right? That, because unfortunately what has happened, right, in our culture is that everything has become part of the machine, right? It's become, become a part of the pop culture where it's become a consumer item instead of what it's supposed to be, which is art. When the greats created cathedrals or great works of literature and stuff, they weren't, intending, they didn't do it, they knew it because they did it because they loved the work and the art.
They
and
didn't
culture.
sign their names to every bit of art they created.
Right.
Because it was for God.
Right. Exactly. So, in a way, like I do this podcast, Vista, we do this podcast, right? I did my tax bills just recently of how much money I've made, and it's all in the red, just so you guys know. All right. So please sign, subscribe, and send us some money because I'm in the red. Right. But yeah, I do it because I love doing this. And you know what I love about doing it? I'll get an email from somebody, and they'll say something like, "Hey, Alex, I listened to you and Fisto talk, and this last Sunday I went to liturgy for the first time in my entire life."
Yeah.
And one email like that, and I've gotten a few, is worth $1,000 in the bank.
You're right, brother. I love that's absolutely true.
Right. Or if I get a message saying, "Hey man, I read that book, I loved it," or "I did this, and I because you guys recommended," that's all that matters, man. That's all that matters. And this is why, that's why I'm staying up until, past my bedtime doing this, because I love this.
Go to work.
Yeah. I had a message from somebody this week where she's like, "I'm out in the middle of England and I'm laughing my head off in the middle of the bus station because of something you wrote." I was just, hell yeah. It was perfect. It's that joy. Right. Just boom, just little lightning bolts. Love it.
Alex, hey, this is great. I love you. This is great. We should talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon. All right, guys.
Guys,
see you later, brother.
I love the talk about mission, but like the biggest reason why I'm here is I tried not writing and it killed me.
Right.
So
oh, that feeling. Yeah. No,
I figured I'd give the alternative a try.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how it is with me with teaching. Like I tried not doing it, and I hated life for 15 years.
Right. That's exactly
right.
it.
Now everything's
Right.
perfect.
All right, guys. So for all the listeners, this was the Pilum Crew. Their anthology will be coming out very soon. There'll be links, and you can always go and subscribe to the Pilum Press newsletter. I highly recommend you go back and pick up their back catalog. It's all fantastic. Thank you very much, guys, for being on tonight. And I love conversations, and we take it back into our group chats because that's what we do, because it's the 21st century. So we all hang out in our digital third spaces, and keep reading, keep writing. Go to Liturgy on Sunday, and have a good night, guys. And for listeners, thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, and support independent writers, musicians, painters. Just do it. Just do it, because you control what you put into your body and your brain, right? Avoid the slop and get the good stuff. All right. Good night, everybody. And we will see you guys next week at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. Good night.